profesor en el Departamento de Planificación Urbana y Regional de la Universidad de Berkeley, en California. Sirve como delegado presidencial y miembro público de la Junta de Cumplimiento de las Barreras de Arquitectura y Transporte de los Estados Unidos. En 2003, el doctor Pineda fundó World Enablement Initiative para mejorar los resultados de participación de los jóvenes con discapacidad a través de los programas de investigación y educación inclusivos. Señor Pineda, tiene la palabra.
Muchísimas gracias. Thank you. It's an honor and a pleasure to address you this day, because this day we're talking about an issue that affects us all, which is the way we live in our cities, the way we build our cities, the way we think about our cities. And I oftentimes like to say to my colleagues in the field of urban planning, I say, you know, I love cities, but they don't love me back. They don't love me back yet because we haven't done enough to make our cities inviting of all people. We haven't done enough to reimagine how our cities can be built and how they can respond to people on their terms and within their lifestyles. You see, I was born in Venezuela in 1978, and by the time my parents took me to the first grade, no school would allow me to enroll because the teachers were told that I could not be incorporated into that class, that there would be too many barriers, and that it would be better for me to be educated at home. So I encountered my young life being denied a right to an education because that city, that school, was not accessible, was not able to have the imagination, or not able to have the structures to allow me to contribute to that school. And my story changed when we moved to the United States, where there were laws and policies and supports, and the teachers made me feel like I was like any other student in that class. You see, I was able to go from being denied an education to completing a PhD in urban planning, not because I changed, but because the environment around me changed. Now, this is what we are all trying to do. We're trying to reimagine what are the environments that we're building, and how do we actually do that. So my role as the president of GAATES, an organization that was founded 10 years ago in conjunction with the UN Convention, is to help coordinate global efforts around Article 9 of the CRPD and work together with partners to use other frameworks, such as Goal 11 of the Sustainable Development Goals, which talks about building inclusive and resilient cities, as well as working with many of you here in the last 6 months of negotiating the new urban agenda. We were able to go from 1 or 2 small mentions to people with disabilities, and in the final document, we're able to, through the coordination of all of you in this room, working with your member states, to have 15 references to people with disabilities, but more importantly, a stand-alone paragraph, which now specifically directs local governments to holistically plan for the needs as well as the opportunities and contributions of people with disabilities. So let us come together and look at the ways that we can coordinate instead of duplicate our efforts. Accessibility is a requirement but it's not just a regulatory requirement. It's a requirement of imagination. It's a requirement for political will. It's a requirement for coordinating budgets. It's a requirement for our partnerships. And that means that we will be able to position accessibility as the best practice for building digital technologies, the best practice for building schools, the best practice for building transportation systems. And I think we're on our way there. The New Urban Agenda includes, for the first time in these global debates on urban planning, the words universal design, the words reasonable accommodations, the words accessibility as it relates to people with disabilities. So we have several tools. We have efforts in all of the countries around the world, but there still remains a gap between national commitment and local capacity, and the local coordinating mechanisms, and the local technical knowledge. And so I am now committing myself to working with all of you to help coordinate those local efforts, to help build alliances between city governments so that they can exchange best practices, and to help organizations like the World Bank and global corporations like Microsoft and others really work together to see what works and how we can scale it up. One of the ways that we're doing this is we are working on a global initiative called Smart Cities for All. There will be $1.5 trillion that will be invested at the local level to deploy technologies that allow digital services within cities to connect people, to improve people's quality of lives. However, there is no structure, mechanism, or even ways of helping these local governments ensure that digital services don't leave anybody behind. So the Smart Cities for All initiative, which I'm leading, and that was supported by our colleagues at Microsoft and others, we are now building tools to help governments at the local level ensure that they know how to do digital accessibility, that they have the tools, procurement policies on digital accessibility, inventory of standards. What are the digital accessibility standards that cities have to consider? A tool that allows them to communicate the benefits, a communication tool. So these are tools that local cities can use, and it's not enough to have these tools available in English. We're working with our partners, and we now are having it translated into Spanish, Portuguese. We're going to have Japanese, Korean, Arabic, Hindi, and Marathi available so that these local governments have the tools they need to build digital services that don't leave anybody behind. You see, I think one of the things that we have to realize is that disability is something that any of us can join at any time, and it's in our enlightened self-interest to build the kind of cities that accommodate for us all, and the transformations that occur in our lives and in the lives of those we love. However, the challenge before us is great. The total land area that has been built in the history of our civilization will need to double. The rate of urbanization is so large that it will double in the next 20 to 30 years. If that construction, if those efforts are not planned for, we will continue to perpetuate the inequality, the marginalization, the poverty, and the exclusion, and quite frankly, we're missing out on that potential, that human potential that can really drive us forward. So what I would like to encourage each of us to do is, whether you're involved in conversations about climate change, if you're involved in conversations about gender issues, if you're involved in conversations about migration, or refugees. There is an urban dimension to all of these issues, as well as an accessibility dimension to all of these issues. If you're looking at replanting 1 million trees in the city of Los Angeles, you have an opportunity to rethink the way your sidewalks are structured, to remove barriers on sidewalks. If you're looking at building, more environmentally friendly or more gender-friendly cities, think about the intersection between gender and disability, aging, friendly cities, accessibility. So all of these issues really boil down to making sure that our built environment reflects the values that we have. Because really, we build cities based on those values that we have. Our values become tangible, become physical in the way we build our cities. So let us take what we've learned of the cities of the past. Let's take the political commitments we have today to then transform the way we think about our cities, understand that we have the values and the frameworks, and the technical solutions are there. Let's just coordinate the effort. Let's standardize our approach. And let's build cities that allow our human dignity and our human potential to be realized. I stand committed to this fight. I'll be working in this area between Article 9, Sustainable Development Goal 11, and the Urban Agenda for my entire life. And if you'd like to be involved in these conversations through the Habitat 3 General Assembly of Partners, you can email me at victor@GAATES, GAATES.org. That's victor@GAATES, GAATES.org. And we'll invite you to join the conversation and help us address accessibility in Kuala Lumpur at the World Urban Forum. So let us be present at the World Urban Forum, and let us help our colleagues in urban planning make cities that love us back. Thank you.